So today we have here with us Mr. Tom Hudson, who's a long time experienced and well-known cancer patients advocate for Europe. Tom, can you tell us about yourself and what you're doing?
Well, I'm very much involved in cancer advocacy, and my prime interest is men's cancers, and I'm involved with Europa Uomo, which is the European Prostate Cancer Coalition. I think it's 23, 24 countries involved, and we are very active in that. And our activity in Europe has also been noticed worldwide, and what we have recently done is we've become involved with people from the other continents, from the Americas, Australia, New Zealand, South America, South Africa, and Central Europe, in the formation of the Worldwide Prostate Cancer Coalition. The idea there is really to ensure that information is exchanged, is made available to everybody. In other words, if there are new developments in Europe or in the States, it's good to share it. It's good to know that it is really prime information, that we know it works, we know it is right, and we can pass it on. And we can, of course, learn from everybody else. And it's been a great experience doing that. I'm also involved in the European Cancer Patient Coalition, which is really dealing with all aspects of cancer. And this I find challenging because cancer patients have had to fight in many cases for their rights, in many cases to get the proper treatment, and also in dealing with their own cancer. So you've got people who are in advocacy who are really people who are determined to succeed, will work very hard in doing so. And organizations like the European Cancer Patient Coalition, we call it ECPC, and the Europa Uomo, are made up of people who in many ways are determined to succeed and are learning new ways of succeeding. So it's challenging, it's fun, and we're all learning every day new ideas, new techniques.
Now, you've told us about your experience working more at the international European level. Can you say something about or give advice to advocates who are working at the national level? How could they get their voices heard in their own countries?
In many ways it's easy, because I think sometimes we think there's a science about lobbying. It's not. It's really about good manners, it's about persistence, it's about politeness, because if you are rude and you push, people can react against that. And we've found that it's about getting to know who can, because many times you will see people in authority who you believe are the people who can make it work for you, but sometimes it's not them. It may be somebody within their department. It's to find out who makes it work for you. It's making contact, and don't give up after the first contact, because many times people will automatically say no. In the lobbyist or in the advocate's vocabulary, there's no such word as no. What we do is we will work, we will make contact, keep good contacts, because if you make contact with somebody, it's not a one-off, it's a beginning, and what you do is make sure to keep in contact with them. Not regularly, but remember on occasion wish them well for the new year or things like that, but make sure that they know who you are, and that makes it easier for you to go back to them. Also, remember to say thank you, because if we are so often pressed to get results, we forget to say thank you. So as an advocate, don't take no for an answer, ever. Be nice about it, make friends, use people, but in a nice sort of way. Remember to say thank you. And that sounds simple, and it really is simple, but it is something that we all, in the rush of everyday life, tend to forget. We're all trying to do so many things at different times. It's about dealing with humanity. We're working for people, for sick people, for people who maybe are not sick now, but could be, or their family members are. And to just remember that, and to keep that niceness about it, but also be determined.
Now, you have experience working with all kinds of populations, age groups, populations in Europe. can you say something about working with younger people, the younger generation of our youth, and also maybe saying something more about the aging population?
Well, certainly the young people are, I find, now I'm sort of kind of ancient, but young people are really the Europe or the world of tomorrow and of today. Because what has happened in the last few years is that there's been a huge growth of information and of knowledge, particularly with young people. They're the people who can do things on cell phones, on iPads, on goodness knows what, which leave the older generation absolutely gasping in their wake. They are more knowledgeable, they have better ways of contacting people, they are better communicators than we are. And I think that we have a lot to learn from young people. My own feeling, and something that we've been doing at the European Cancer Patient Coalition, is to actually seek the advice of young people. Rather than we tell them what they should be doing, we're asking them how we should do it, and asking them whether they would like to do it. And it is by acknowledging that you get this wonderful response, because young people, students in school, medical students, people like that, they have huge energy and huge enthusiasm. And they are, well, they're today's citizens, but they're tomorrow's world citizens. And we really do have to acknowledge that.
And how about with the aging population? Because I know, for example, it's more difficult to get men over the age of 50 to get skin checks and for screening. And what is your advice regarding that?
Well, you particularly touched a sensitive spot there, because gender issues, particularly where men are concerned, this is almost a science in its own, because fortunately the women, because maybe of the fact that they have had children, who they've raised families, in many ways they have run the world for us, though as a man I don't like admitting that. The women are much better in dealing with health issues. And I know, particularly now, going back to prostate cancer, so many women who have had to take their husbands to the doctor to ensure that he gets checked. And that check probably saves his life, because he might have had a symptom which he, being typical male, brushed it off. That's all right, I can deal with that, or nothing to worry about. And this is something that we as men have to realize, that we are as vulnerable. In fact, if you look at the statistics, more vulnerable than women. And interesting, very recently research done in a report made by the Commission showed categorically that men can live as long as women, providing they learn how to look after themselves. And this is not being done. You know, I'm a man, I don't need it, I'm tough, I don't have to do this. That's not true. I think that everybody needs to be more careful and more aware of health. And ageism, if you like, is another factor, because I know in my country, when you get to a certain age, you are not given treatment because you are presumed to be too old, or, you know, we won't waste money on you because we only give treatment to people of a certain age. And that has to change, because in Europe and in a world where people are living longer, men and women are living longer, governments, health departments are going to have to give serious consideration to changing the rules. It's not good enough to wipe somebody off at the age of 65 or 70 as being too old, and, you know, we don't need to spend money on them, because these people can live probably into their 80s and their 90s, and indeed into the hundreds. And statisticians are telling us that the younger generation who are born now will certainly be living into their hundreds. So it's a changing world, and it is something that we, as lobbyists, as advocates, people involved in the whole issue of health, have to be aware of. It's not a static picture, it's changing, and we have to make sure that that change is recognised by governments and something is done about it.
Okay. Tom, can you tell us about your experience? Tell us about your different positions you've held, and what what were the elements that brought you to where you are now? What are all the elements that are contributing to the Tom that we know today?
Well, I'll make it short. I worked in industry for 35 years. The company that I worked for eventually was bought out and then was closed. Those were the bad old days where things like that happened. I was subsequently headhunted by the Irish Cancer Society, and they invited me to take on the position of CEO of that organisation, which was, in fact, for me, was a huge learning curve, because I came from the protection, if you like, of industry into an area which was challenging, very interesting, and completely new as far as work was concerned. New ideas of raising funds, new ideas of confronting authorities, changing people. And the work with the Irish Cancer Society also led to other things. The UICC, that's the International Union Against Cancer, invited me to run their patient program, the COPES program, which I did for a while, and then subsequently I became a council member of UICC for 6 years. And around about that time, I also was invited to take on the presidency of ECL, which was, I think that for the first time I really learnt the international aspect of health and caring for health. And it was a wonderful experience, because we met people who had very similar ideas, very similar objectives, but coming from different backgrounds. And this was both educational, enjoyable, and challenging. It was a fun time. Subsequent to that, I then became involved in the men's issues in Europe, and became involved in the formation of Europa Uomo, which is the coalition, as I said. And it was really modelled on Europa Donna, who really led the way in Europe. And I also became involved in the European Cancer Patient Coalition, which, as I think I've mentioned, deals with all the cancers. And that's been a fun time, but very challenging because of the many, many different interests involved in that. But it's been a good time.
In all your years of experience of being a cancer patient advocate, is there one instance, one experience that really stands out in your mind?
One?
Several.
Well, it's difficult because there are so many different aspects to advocacy. Just dealing with men's issues, one issue which surprised me, but it is something that I learned from, was that in Europa Uomo, on one occasion, we were having a general meeting, and the wives of those men who were at that meeting asked to address the meeting. And for me, this was a stunning and a wake-up call, because you can be very focused in the sort of work that you do. And I was being typical male, just thinking from a male's approach, but those women coming to talk to us opened the door to the fact that it is family and relations and friends who are all involved. It's not just my cancer or your cancer. We share this in our own way with our work friends, with our relations, and it's a much wider picture. And this is just coming back to the advocacy side of it. When I go to the European Commission or somebody like that to talk, I'm really talking from my particular interest, but I'm actually representing not just cancer patients, but their families and a much wider community. And suddenly you're talking about a lot of people, and politically, that's votes.
Now, you've mentioned already that women are basically behind the driving force for men to get screened, for them to look after their health. What about those men who don't have a partner, a female partner? How can we get them more involved into looking after their health?
I don't have a ready answer on that. It is something that we are very conscious of, and what we try to do by, again, specifically focusing on them, we try to raise awareness of health issues that are particular to men. to try and make it easier for them to do that. But it is a problem, and it is something that we have to continue working on as an organisation, as from Europe of Woman's point of view. But also in the European Cancer Patient Coalition, it is something that we have to be aware of, is raising that awareness.
Because it's so important to have that social network also,
Yes.
as you say, but I can imagine that when a man who's living by himself, who has lost his partner or has just never been involved with a partner, all of a sudden finds himself alone with a devastating cancer, such as head and neck cancer. What is that? How can we get that man out of his own, let's say, little hole of doom? How can we bring somebody like that out of their shell and encourage them and give them some hope, some light, and to get them involved in the community more and get them going to seeking health services and seeking help? It's by raising awareness. But
Head and neck is a particular issue because it is something that I've been made aware of recently, that there is not enough known about it. Not specifically where men are concerned, but in the general population. And it is something that we, as an organisation, working with other similar organisations, should be and have in fact said that we will work on that, because it is something that we as advocates can do to ensure that attention is being raised. But the head and neck is a particular issue, and it's only since talking with people in that area that I've actually discovered that there are other equally important areas in the rare cancer field which are, because of their nature, have not been talked about, and because they're not talked about, people are unaware of them. And if you're unaware of them, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to take the proper action that may save your life. And then this is really, it's down to all of us really to work on this.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's a lot of good, valuable advice coming from a very experienced cancer patient advocate. Thank you for taking your time with us today.
Thank you.